Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for a special show as I welcome scouted Jake Entwistle to talk about trends in football and in particular power forwards, a new trend that is emerging in centre forwards in high level football. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, and this show is sponsored by Luke Roper. If you want to get 20% off everything Luke have to offer, then put in the code TVV20 at the checkout and you will get you 20% off everything that Luke have. Jake, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I asked you on via social media the other day because I was reading something on The Athletic, and then I went down a bit of a wormhole of reading things on Scouted and Skills Corner's website, and I came across an article from you about a month or so ago about power forwards and how centre forward play is kind of shifting in top level football, and I found it really, really interesting. So I wanted to get you on because in our minds, Villa may be looking for a centre forward in the summer, and just to talk a little bit around number nines, what you do and some of the interesting trends that are emerging. So thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm sure the audience are really going to enjoy it.
No, thanks for having me. It's always really humbling that people find the articles, read them and want to talk about them more, which I love doing as well, because you get to explore more of the stuff that you have written down or get to get someone else's thoughts of how they've read it and how they've interpreted it. So yeah, really looking forward to it. And yeah, Ollie Watkins featured in the article quite prominently, and in others I've written as well. So he's someone that's been at the top level of that role for some time. So yeah, interested to sort of talk about his role and whether he needs a bit more support as well.
Yeah. So do you want to just say a little bit about what Scouted is and talk a little bit about Skills Corner as well, just to give people kind of an idea of your background and what it is you do?
Scouted I've been with for 10 years in and out. I used to work for Squawka and then left at the start of last season to commit full time to Scouted. And essentially we've been an online magazine, have worked with sort of data partners to just profile and discover the next wave, the next generation of players. So our sort of USP has always been under 23. We try not to touch players after that and let them go into the mainstream. But watching youth tournaments, profiling young players and trying to sort of help people, whether it's people using it for things like Football Manager or if it's actually informing now, like with content creators, focusing purely on their clubs and looking for transfer evaluation, and then working with data partners to sort of show how clubs can use their data to profile different types of players and how you should start looking at that in the modern era, noticing transfer trends. So we do a lot of stuff. We used to publish a physical magazine, but then that COVID made that difficult to do cost-wise. So we've gone into sort of online subscription magazine work now. I've been writing a weekly newsletter this season, as well as doing the Skill Corner sponsored articles in which they give us the keys to all of their data, and we're allowed to explore trends that we think we see when we're watching football and see if the data supports it, and sometimes finding new stuff with the data as well. And the power forward in particular is something that I stumbled across quite early this season. Just noticed that the general size of every centre forward had shot back up to everyone needing to be at least 6'2".
Yeah.
And then you notice that everyone's super fast. And then it was just about exploring why that's happening, what sort of attributes those players have that is now succeeding again in the modern game, and then putting it all together into this introduction of a power forward article, which is the one that you stumbled across, which just talks about what those people look like in data, what those strikers look like in data, and the data surrounding it, why they're sort of coming to prominence again. So yeah, big mix of everything, but it's all about sort of identifying the next generation of players for anyone that's interested.
Yeah, so we'll link the article in the descriptions on the video and audio as well, so people can check it out. But obviously, we'll try and speak through the article as best we can on this show today. So I find data stuff fascinating because I can talk and write about football in terms of giving my opinion, but I look at some of the graphs that like you've put together for your article, and I would find that difficult to then write about it or speak about it, because that's just not my skill set at all. So how did you find out that was your skill set, like kind of analysing data and then being able to write about it?
My job at Squawka, because it was always a stats based or stats first, I really leaned into that stuff. I loved discovering what you were watching on the pitch, what that translated to in a metric. And again, it's not to say that I only base all of my stuff on data. A lot of it is like I love watching football. So all of the hours that I accumulated through watching, I then tried to think like reverse engineer it all. So if you're watching a Villa player and you think, okay, like Watkins, like he's scoring so many goals, it feels like he's always sprinting. Like, what does then that look like so that I can find other players really quickly from other leagues? Because again, for a scout or anyone in football, it's impossible to just consume that much football and get good knowledge if you're just scouting sort of 10 different countries, 10 different leagues. You can't, there's not enough time in the day to watch people, and you have to almost get lucky. So I love the idea of being like, right, I love this style of player. What does that look like through numbers? And then because it's informed by like what I'm seeing, that's why I find it easier to write about, because I knew what I wanted to write about, and then I've managed to sort of build. I use the term model loosely because I'm not a data engineer. I do very basic things, but what I've learned this season is that sometimes the simple stuff is the stuff that works best and is easier it's more accessible for the entire football population as well. So yeah, I've just always loved the numbers and been obsessed with like people, not just top scorer charts, but looking at the leaders of every single metric that you have access to. Was fortunate to have access to it through Squawka and the Opta data.
Yeah.
And then now through Scouted, getting sort of tracking data access through Skill Corner has just opened my eyes again to stuff that like, oh, that's actually a really important metric for this style of player. This is how they work together. You should focus on that. So
Okay.
the archetype stuff that we've been doing, which the Power Forward is part of, is all about like building data profiles on like really robust sort of off-ball tracking data using Skill Corner to help clubs recruit the specific style of player that they want to find.
I mean, I used to be obsessed with numbers, but unfortunately it was squad numbers. So there's not really any career that you can forge from that. So it's much better to go down your route. So but some people watching at the moment, I know you gave a brief explainer at the start, but some people might be asking, well, what is a power forward? How would you best surmise what a power forward is?
Yeah, so power forward for me is basically like they are the size of your old target forward or target man that was sort of dominated early, like front twos in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But they now are just basically pure athletes in the sense that they have that physical stature, but they are also the fastest player on the pitch. Again, to use a lot of buzzwords, and I'm always sort of tentative when I hear myself say them out loud, but it's all about sort of like verticality on a football pitch. So these players run up and down in towards the box, stretch the opposition. They are the target for sort of through balls and balls over the top. It's about the chief metric used in the Skill Corner articles. They track players' runs in behind, which is defined by a player like actually breaking that last line. So the power forward is about players that are really big, that they can hold themselves physically for when they're not just attacking space, but they also have that speed so that when you pass the ball in behind, they have the best chance of getting it. And again, saying it all out loud sounds so simple and quite sort of reductive, but there was even correlation in the data. But like the faster the player was, the more likely a teammate was to pass to them in behind. That sounds very obvious. It sounds simple, but even those subconscious things is why I think just looking at speed is so important for these strikers. And yeah, you might have someone that runs in behind, but if they can't do it at the intensity required in order to disrupt a defensive line, it's not going to be as effective. So yeah, power forward is basically almost a combination of those old school front twos. It's the size of the target man mixed with the speed and the sort of goal threat of the little man that used to be with them. And by combining them into one, it gives you an extra position on the pitch in the sense that you don't have to play a front two, essentially. So perhaps that's why it's developed, is that as the game went more into controlling the ball and in intensity, you couldn't afford to have two people standing up there. So it's a really demanding role. It's a role that a lot of people will try to play, but not all of them can be effective at it. And yeah, the power, like, it's pretty simple. Power is at the core of it. It's about speed, ball striking, shots, like getting lots of shots off from those runs. And yeah, I think just, yeah, target forwards physique mixed with pure speed is probably the best sort of brief description of it.
Yeah, because it's quite a basic thing, or it sounds quite basic, really, fundamental. But essentially, someone who's taller and contains more physical attributes than a shorter striker, is actually going to cover ground quicker when the pass is made as well. And that's referenced in the article as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So they all sound very simple, but like putting them together, you'll be surprised at how often it's not put together, like that simple stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, the height thing is mainly based on the fact that, like, because these aren't sort of like 7-foot players, that where you become almost too tall to run. Yeah, if you're like, I found like 185, like just over 6 foot seems to be the minimum you'd want in this, like the perfect ideal of this power forward style. I'm sure we'll come on to it as well, but another reason this archetype was like developed was because of the incredible sort of increased intensity in Premier League football.
Yeah.
So like you're basically sticking an athlete up front more than a footballer, which again might be sort of pain to traditionalist ears, but that's just what's happening at the elite level. They are obviously, you put the graphic on. I know not people listening won't be able to see it, but essentially the Premier League has got faster and more intense at a pretty staggering rate.
Yeah.
Over the last 8 seasons. And since this was published, actually, there was something else. John Byrne-Murdoch, who's the chief data reporter at the Financial Times, recently did a big data piece on like the injury crisis, about players are playing too many games. And his conclusion was that it's not more minutes, but each minute is exerting a much higher load.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so from the year 2000, the minutes and distance played by the average player at like top level Premier League football hasn't changed, or has even got fewer because there's more subs. But the amount of sprints since that 2006, I think, is the point that he's put, has increased by 80%. So they're not necessarily doing more distance, but when they are asked to do a run, they're doing it at full speed, full pelt. So it's no longer enough to be a footballer. You have to be an athlete that can play football, especially in the striker role, in which you get 15 touches a game and you're just being asked to run in behind selflessly, so that it creates space for the players that are having 40 touches a game to then either find you or have a shot themselves. So it's probably the most physically demanding role, maybe along with old school fullback, which again is starting to come into fashion because of this basketballification of football matches. So you're covering the same distance, but it's walk, sprint rather than just like jog perpetually, which is why you're seeing transition teams climb up the league quicker, because they're well equipped to take advantage of that situation. I think it was Miguel Delaney that did an interview with Bournemouth manager Iraola early in the season, and Iraola said, like, technically and tactically we're as good as the players now, because he was obviously a professional.
Yeah.
And played with, there's that random team where he's with Pirlo and Lampard in MLS, I think, that went round. But he said the physical side is what we'd struggle with. Guardiola sort of backed that up. I can't remember if it came before or after that quote, but was saying modern football is the way that Bournemouth, Newcastle and Brighton play Liverpool. It's not about being positional. It's about rising to the rhythm of the game and being there. So if managers are aware of it, the increasing intensity, then it's definitely a thing. And this power forward profile of striker is basically built to flourish in that environment, because obviously matches are being squished into sort of a tiny area. So there is space for players to run in behind more often now, because of the, like, Aston Villa fans will know, like, Emery's line, maybe not as high this season, but that was a calling card of last season, getting in the Champions League, was that sort of like suicide high line. But then you've got players at the back like Konsa that can marshal it, and then they've got someone like Watkins that takes advantage of when other teams do it. So basically, to say that the meta of the Premier League especially is it's not just like physicality, it's intensity and sprinting. So the power forward is someone that is going to do that and sort of set the tone for your team.
So with my obviously very limited knowledge of a power forward, I can see that Ollie Watkins at Villa has attributes that a power forward has, and he's on this graph here that I've put up on the screen for those watching via YouTube that evaluates the power forward. But I think of power, I'm probably doing him a disservice here, but I don't think I'd see him myself as a power forward.
Watkins has the like off-ball running profile of a power forward, in the sense that his main run that he does is breaking that line. He doesn't drop off a lot. He doesn't want to get involved in play, and he doesn't even make, compared to other strikers, make a lot of like cross runs. It's all about the receiving vertical passes in behind. So he has that trait. I guess what you would argue is that Watkins for me is always really fun. I always think he is taller than he is. That probably means that he is fine as a power forward because his presence seems larger than it actually is. But you would say that potentially like a bit of extra height would be closer to the ideal mold. But
Yeah.
I think Watkins, the only thing that's again not potentially power forwardy is his like ball striking is inconsistent, and it's all about like shifting and shooting. But he does shoot a lot, so Watkins is probably like in between two. Like
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
the other striker like archetype that sort of I compare this to is like it's just like the classic poacher. It's like the goal hanger. So they do all the crosses. They can be fast, but it's like Chris Wood essentially. And Watkins is probably in between both. He does have the speed and the tendency to run in behind like a power forward, but maybe he's not quite there in all markers. But he is as he's shown at Villa, he's a very effective player when he does run in behind.
The one that instantly comes to my mind, and he was pretty much the poster boy of your article, is Victor Garez, because the runs he makes per game are staggering. He's absolutely lethal in front of goal. He's a big burly bloke as well, but my God, he can move. So with this trend now emerging in the summer with strikers moving, we often know that one has to go to kind of create that domino effect for there to be a market around players in a certain position. I think it works well with goalkeepers, and obviously it works well with centre forwards, because usually teams only play with one centre forward, and of course they only play with one goalkeeper. Sesko's another one that's mentioned in your article. So I guess in the Premier League, if someone was to sign Garez, if someone's to sign Sesko, Haaland's already at Man City. He would be classed as a power forward, one of the ultimate power forwards. I'm assuming he's showing that in the Premier League now as well. Everyone is kind of going to go in that direction. Once Arsenal and Liverpool do it, let's say, and Manchester City are already doing it, even the teams lower down, they're going to start trying to do the same thing, because that's usually how it works.
Yeah, and I think like Sesko was really interesting data-wise in the sense that I'd always said, I'd used him as an example, like the fact that Arsenal have been linked to the fastest striker in the Bundesliga is an awareness that they need to lean into this meta, that they need pure speed up front. And then I found it interesting that he actually made fewer runs in behind because he plays like in a 2 with a Pender at Leipzig, and it was actually a Pender that stretches the line more often. So again, Sesko has the pure physical build of the power forward, but his style of running was actually less than the likes of Watkins and stuff, which again was interesting, because perhaps Leipzig are telling him not to do that. And that's not to say that if he went to Arsenal or someone in the Premier League that they would say just run in behind. But sometimes it's hard to teach a tendency, even if you have all the attributes to do it. So perhaps that's why there's been constant hesitation by Arsenal to sign him, because he's not actually quite where we want him to yet. Whereas obviously Arsenal made a reported bid for Watkins in January because they already know, okay, maybe he's not the biggest and fastest, but he's fast enough, and he's already got the mindset running in behind. Whereas coaching that mindset takes longer time than it does to purely like sort of bulk someone up, or you're fast or you're not.
Who is the perfect power forward then? Is it Haaland? Is it Garez?
Garez is, again, whether it's inflated by what he is at Sporting, Garez is the ideal candidate for it, because it's about that. It doesn't matter if the run that you make isn't successful, it's just about making 15 of them a game.
Yeah.
And I think so the recede runs that on that graph is like 5.5 a game, but I think his old coach at Coventry explained it really well. And there's a quote in the article that, if I just read that out, it basically explains the power forward profile. And he says, this is Adi Vivesh, who was Coventry City assistant manager when Gyökeres was there. He said, if you defend on the halfway line against someone like Vic, he's going to keep running in behind. He may miss 1 or 2 chances, but he'll make 13, 14, 15 runs. And for defenders, that's very difficult to deal with. So power, explosive pace came to the fore. and the fact that he liked to drift into wide areas bought him a bit of space.
Yeah.
And that drifting wide is actually also very interesting, because the more I've looked at this profile, the more people like Gyökeres and Delap for Ipswich, the more they actually profile a bit like wingers as well. Because they can't always receive the ball in behind, you have to have a bit of ability to be able to like carry it and create your own shot. So think of them as like a battering ram, or sort of the one-man army, like those sort of descriptors come into your head. So can the striker that you've got pick the ball up on the halfway line and get it to the penalty area at high speed, and then also still get a shot off? I think Watkins can carry the ball, but that's probably where he falls down in like scoring systems on it, because he probably prefers receiving it as it arrives in the box rather than taking it all the way, which, as I said, it's he is really good at it. I'm not trying to play down Watkins, but that's perhaps the difference. Whereas Gyökeres, again, metrics wise, and when you watch him, he will pick up the ball on the halfway line, run towards the box and get a shot away. Whether that's amplified because of the Portuguese league or level of defending is up for debate, but you can't deny that his style of play is, I'm going to pick up the ball and I'm going to get towards the box and I'm going to get a shot. And what's interesting is that Haaland was like that at Dortmund, but because of, again, the way Man City play plus how teams play against them, he's become more of that poacher style, in which doesn't have much in behind space to run into, especially in his second season. I know he still scores loads of goals, but it's very much about box movement for him now, because the whole Man City team's camped on the edge of the area, so he doesn't get to do his power forward tendencies. But even Man City, by signing Marmoush, by being linked with Kirkes, being linked with Reinders from Milan, those are all players that will do well in up and down games. They're all either ball carriers or like big runners.
Yeah.
So it shows that Pep's like, okay, they played their best football at the end of the season with Nico O'Reilly and Nunes at fullback, who are just straight line athletes. So I think we're moving away, which again I think is quite nice. We're moving away from hyper control as a way of winning games, and there is that sort of NBA style coming into the Premier League, which I think makes it more of an even playing field as well.
Yeah. I mean, those that are watching via YouTube have been treated to some great movement from the dog behind you as well, which I've really, really enjoyed. Anything.
I didn't notice he'd crept on.
No, I love it. Anything dog related or animal related, I'm all here for. I've just thought about this on the fly whilst you were talking, so it may be completely incorrect. It kind of like a power forward to me, from what you're saying, is essentially kind of perfection in a number 9, and you're not going to. It's very rare that you'll find someone that can do every single thing that you've just spoke about as a power forward. So when I think about Villa, and you've mentioned the kind of bits in Watkins' game that he doesn't have, this was the case, I think, particularly early on in the season when Rodgers was playing as a central number 10. Villa obviously play with a left 10 and sometimes a right 10 as well, in that he was almost doing everything you want a power forward to do, except for the final step, and that was Watkins. And I've said before, actually, that I think long term, I think Morgan Rodgers could be a centre forward as he develops, because if you just look at he's a physical specimen and all the attributes that he carries. If he worked a little bit on his end product, his productivity has been pretty good this season in terms of goals and assists. I've then suddenly started to think, well, could he be a power forward?
Well, Morgan Rodgers is one of my favourite players.
Yeah, you will be for a lot of neutrals, I think.
Yeah. So when I sort of went back into writing about football at the start of this season, I think one of the first things I wrote was based on his performance against Arsenal, just about how this guy can run through an entire team and himself. And the only thing about him becoming a centre forward is whether you can train him to like do those runs without the ball at his feet.
Yeah, that's probably the fundamental where he'd fall down.
I might have contradicted myself there by saying like Gyökeres can pick it up. So Rodgers, that if he gets it on the halfway line, he can take it all the way and get a shot away. But when you put him as centre forward, he's got to start doing all of those runs without any.
Yeah, it doesn't work, does it?
Without every guarantee that he's going to success. So if you combined Watkins and Rodgers, you would have the most devastating forward in the Premier League potentially, and that is why they work so well together. Because what we've just said it there. Is like, okay, so if Villa are transitioning, it's give it to Rodgers, let him carry it. But then if it's sort of you've got the whole team up the pitch and you're looking for that final pass, then you're looking for Watkins. So they have all of the ingredients to engineer the same situations in which one of these power forwards would flourish. They're just doing it through two players. And Rodgers, I don't know again what the Villa perception is, but I think he's infinitely better in the central area. But obviously then Asensio came in, who was very good. So I think my hierarchy of Rodgers' effectiveness is central, on the right, on his strong side, where he just, again, straight line runs. And I think he's weakest on the left, which is...
really?
I'm happy to be told that with Villa players, Villa fans watching him more often, that's not the case. But I always get disappointed that I don't get to see his, like, again, to use the cheesy buzzword, but I don't get to see his verticality when he's playing, like, inverted.
Yeah.
Because you naturally have to, like, weave in and out a bit more. Whereas on the right and central, he gets to just go straight line towards goal. Asensio's been fantastic. Is he signed permanent? That's just a loan, isn't it?
It's a loan, but I think it's going to be such a low transfer fee in the grand scheme of things that when he was in that hot run of form, all the word was is that they're going to sign him. PSG are obviously willing to let him go for around 13, 14 million. Wages not astronomical to the extent of Rashford's.
Yeah.
But then it is that change in it's moved Rodgers away. But then I suppose Villa fans on the face of it would say they don't like Rodgers on the right, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think they're used to him. They've liked him in that number 10 position. But actually, if you look at his productivity and you look at Villa's results since he's been on the right, I've always thought maybe I'm not seeing it, but there must be a reason that Emery keeps doing that. And maybe it's the reason that you've just said about the verticality.
Well, I think it's just it's only recently that he started doing it from the right. I think I posted the other day I can't remember which game it was, but I was like, oh, it's really nice to see that his tendencies from when he plays central, you're now starting to see them when he's wide.
Yeah.
Because there was a case where I was like, he looks like a different player out wide, and I don't like it. I miss seeing him just ragdoll midfielders off him as he runs through. But so perhaps again, it's just learning how to do that from the right, and then I think that allows you to get your classic like inverted winger on the left, and Asensio just sort of dovetailing with both wingers and the forward. The big thing about the Morgan Rodgers as centre forward, I just think the hardest bit to train is that sort of like, I'm going to just run into some space. I might not even get the ball, but I'm going to run as if I am going to get it. And I think the only issue with like wingers and ball carriers is that's that they like receiving the ball and then running. Whereas Watkins has got that sort of like, I'm just going to make runs all day. Eventually that someone will give it to me. And that's something that Emery himself coaches incredibly well, because his track record with turning good forwards into like off-ball demons, like Baka, Cavani, Aubameyang did it with Aubameyang and Lacazette at Arsenal. Watkins went from, like, all of the quotes I know are really famous now, especially to Villa fans, about, I used to just be running aimlessly, now I'm running within the width of the penalty area. So if there's a manager that can turn Rodgers into a centre forward, and a successful one, it would be Emery. But I think his ball, you want him getting it deeper and not always just trying to run without the ball, because of how destructive that is. And like we've said, you need a squad as well. Like, the intensity of the games is massive. So even if you think, oh, he's not always going to play central, there will be some games where he does get to go back there. Either the opposition will demand it or an injury will demand it. So it's good to have options.
Yeah, it's crazy to think Watkins used to be a winger as well, so kind of had to completely change his game to fit a modern day centre forward. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, Ollie Watkins.
And Garez is the same. When he wasn't coming through, he was a winger, a left winger. And even Liam Delap, who again is probably another good example of like the physicality and the frame that you'd want in power forward, watch him dribble with the ball, and Hull even played him out wide. Another, you said about power forwards being perfection, so they don't play with their back to goal. They're big enough to be able to, like, if they need to, they can contest.
Yeah, because Watkins can do it, and he does it well, actually.
Yeah, but the idea is that they're not actually meant to be facing play. They're meant to be stretching it. Lukaku is an example of, if he was coming through now, he would score even more goals because he wouldn't have been asked to be this target man just because he's big.
Yeah.
They would have been like when he played right wing at Everton, right? Running straight and not having to like face the ball is the big thing of the power forward. It's like everything is in a straight line towards goal. That's what you want them doing, and that's because they're fast. And then the power is because that means they can just bat more players off. So Lukaku again has become someone that's just very good in the penalty area. I think could win another league title with Conte, who obviously loves him for that reason, goals and assists. So he's one of those players that's always hated but has been very successful. But I just think if you think about how he played when he was younger, and then got turned into like a back to goal player, in the same way that Haaland had to do that bit of that, and then it was like, oh, he's not good at it. You just need these players to have as much space to run towards goal as possible and facing goal. So that's like, again, another core aspect of this archetype. They're not your target forwards because they're not wall passes like Olivier Giroud. You don't want them doing that. You want them running towards goal.
Yeah, I find this really, really interesting, and I'm wary I've kept you for 35 minutes already, but just kind of bring it back round to Villa here. The centre forward department feels a little bit up in the air for Villa going into this summer transfer window. Is there any because Villa might go down the route of keeping Watkins and going for a younger forward, a little bit like they did when they had John Duran, who was obviously nuts and has ended up going to Saudi Arabia. I don't even know how you begin to describe his game, but if kind of young power forwards coming through, is there any that you think Villa should be looking at?
Yeah, so I noted a few names down, and again, it's really hard to find someone that ticks every single box of it because, as you said, it is quite the ideal figure is very sort of, at that point, it's a dream. But there are a few players that, again, will probably be available and also have been mentioned in like rumours for other clubs. The first one is Emmanuel Amiga at Strasbourg, who is Dutch, and he is obviously at Strasbourg, so therefore Chelsea will get some sort of first refusal and have been linked to him. He is one of the fastest forwards in Europe.
Okay.
And he's 195 centimeters. Doesn't
big boy then.
But he's very slim. He's tall, so like you've got that stride length better in larger spaces, but he doesn't touch the ball until he's in the box or until he's received a pass in behind. If you're buying him to like drop deep and link play, don't get him. He needs to be in a team in which transitions, he's either there to like make advantage of the transitions, or you're just going to keep getting him to go in behind. Like some of the metrics that I use to like profile these strikers is like average shot distance, touches per shot. So he averages like 9 touches per shot, which is, again, if you're in single figures, it means that you've got that single-minded approach of whenever I get the ball, I'm either in a position to shoot or I'm going to shoot. And 12.5 yards average shot distance. So his average shot is from the penalty spot, which is great. Someone that's really, really similar to Watkins in terms of like off-ball running profile and physical to an extent is Wilson Isidore at Sunderland. And I know he's like born in 2000, which is like for this season, the scouted age limit was 2001. But he's someone that's like peaking a bit late, like Garez did. Like whenever you watch him, you see him just attack space in behind. He also like is good on receiving crosses runs as well. So in terms of someone that like would be a gamble, because obviously he's in the Championship, but someone that has the profile that you're looking for, he would be interesting. And obviously Watkins is proof that Championship to Premier League has been working very well.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why Garez, by the way, think about what he was doing at Coventry rather than Sporting, because he was a battering ram at Sporting as well.
Yeah.
There's a Brazilian forward that's been linked to Arsenal a couple of times called Igor Jesus, probably most similar to Watkins' physical profile. He's not like 6'4", but he's like quick enough for like a 5'11" frame. Is probably better if you wanted someone that can drop in to like hold it up and link play a bit more. So he probably goes, if there's like a spectrum of these forwards of like power forward is up here, and then you can either go towards poacher or target forward as one of those. He's probably like power plus target. Whereas Isidore is probably like power plus like the poaching aspect. He's probably attainable. He's at Botafogo, who are like reigning champions. I think they also won the Libertadores, but I always confuse myself about when that's played. So sorry if I've got that wrong. Like, just as I was sort of preparing for this, there's two like sleeper picks that aren't proper centre forwards yet that would be very interesting for Emery to get his hands on, that I think could turn them into serious like in behind runners. One of them is called Matias Fernandez Pardo, who's at Lille. He plays on the left wing or up front, which is what we've said about Watkins and Gorka when they were younger.
Yeah.
But he's extremely fast, sprints a lot. So the fact that his sprints are very quick and very frequent means that he's got the capacity to play this demanding role. Lille would probably be reluctant to sell because they've just lost Jonathan David. So I think Fernandez Pardo is going to get more minutes next season, and then everyone will want him.
Replacement from within.
Exactly. So slightly different player, but he's going to play even more. And then I think everyone will be like, wow, who's this kid at Lille? And then the final one is a Norwegian, which again, Scandinavia is probably... So Scandinavia and Nigeria produce the most of these like 7 foot but rapid players.
Yeah.
So like Haaland, Garez, Larson at Wolves, Højlund to an extent. I know Højlund's been like dropping off awfully, but again, I think he's being used not to his strengths. He has the profile of a power forward. He's just got no confidence at the moment. But Sindre Walla Egeli, who is at Nordsjælland, he's like 18, 6 foot plus, left-footed, straight line runner, bulldozer type player. He'd be someone. These are all players that are obviously, as I said, they're young players, and they would need to probably be understudy to Watkins in the same way that Duran was. But they're all very interesting, and they've all got those power forward traits, and none of them are the complete option yet, but they're all young enough to be able to develop the bits that they need to. But yeah, look at these players every day. So I could list players, but it becomes unhelpful when you're just giving so many names. So yeah, Amiga's probably the one that's, again, had a very good season, runs in behind a lot, and is super fast. I think he suits that transition play that I think Villa would lean into. But you've got to compete with Chelsea, and then as soon as you have to do that, the wages and price tag just become inflated. So
yeah, people love, though. I do as well. Love hearing like who's the next striker, and hearing people who've got knowledge talking about who the next big thing is going to be. And I know Villa are looking at the Scandinavian market as well, because obviously they're looking like they're the favourites for Nijpan in from Rosenborg.
Yeah,
at the moment as well. So it's a market Villa and Monchi are definitely looking at. So it will be fascinating to see what direction Villa go with it for a centre forward in the summer, or if at all. I think they will, but it'll be interesting to see after doing this if they do kind of go down the power forward route. And if they do, I'll be coming to you, Jake, to do another show.
Well, I was going to say, I'll be keeping an eye out who they're linked with now, because I'll be able to... Yeah, you can tell pretty quickly if someone fits that mould or not. But Emery, as a coach, loves coaching strikers to run in behind and don't worry about getting the ball. So
yeah,
I think Villa are... I wrote at the end, for all of this meta that we've spoken about, not just like forwards-wise, I think Villa's team is extremely well equipped to really become like a force in this meta, because the way the squad's been built. I mentioned Konsa, like perfect defender for this. The pivot that you've got when Anana and Kamara are fit is insane. Tielemans obviously is able to play any position on the pitch he wants, and also has an engine to link it all together. I just think you need to buy the Espanyol goalkeeper to replace Martinez if he goes.
I think that might be what ends up happening. It's interesting to hear you say that. Just before we let you go, then have you got good knowledge of him and seen good things of him?
My colleague does more of the watching scouting. We try and almost run it like a club. I do a lot of the data scouting and then feed names to him that he already finds his own as well. But he sat down to do proper scouting of Joan Garcia the other day and said I'm super excited. I need to write about him. And as an Arsenal fan, he was like, I hope those links are true. But if we were being objective of it's an absolute dream sort of succession if Martinez leaves and you get this guy in. So again, Spanish, you'd imagine that Emery is, one, aware of him, and two, has probably spoken to him, or at least clubs, managers in the Liga. So yeah, I think Villa could be in a very good spot to compete in the Champions League again, and also become like solid, consistent top four, if not challenging, based on their squad profile. So adding another striker in to compete with Watkins and share those minutes, or replace him if he does leave, would be important. But they seem to know what they're doing and what they need to look for in this like modern athletification of the league.
I love hearing people who don't support Villa talk about Villa in that way, as if we're like something to admire and we're doing things the right way. I always find that really encouraging, and it's really interesting what you're saying about Garcia there. If any content around him comes out on your channels, do let us know, and I'll be sure to tweet it out. Jake, thanks ever so much for joining me today. I've kept you way longer than I intended to, but I've really enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably more me going on about it, because I love being able to flesh out the ideas, and really appreciate you giving me the time to do so. So thank you.
No, we'll put all Jake's details in the description on the video and audio, so do look out for him and give him a follow on social media as well, and watch out for his articles. If you've watched this content via YouTube, if you could subscribe with your post notifications on, that would be absolutely great. Let us know in the comments what centre forward, if any, you'd like to see Villa sign in the summer. If you're listening via Spotify or via Apple Podcast, and if you could give us a 5-star review and say something nice about us in the comments or the review section, that would be much appreciated. Plenty more content coming out on the channel through the week, so watch out for that. And as always, we'll end with a big massive up the Villa.